Welcome back to Bears Talk. I am your host, Bryan Perez, the managing editor of BearsTalk.com. You could head over to X and follow me there at Bryan Perez NFL. You could follow Bears Talk at the Bears Talk. And on today's episode, we are going to break down the Chicago Bears depth chart. Yes, the Bears announced or released their first official / unofficial depth chart of the 2023 season. So we're going to take a deep dive into that and pick out any of the surprises. There weren't many, but there are a couple that I think are worth noting. We're going to look at some of the depth issues that are pretty apparent after breaking down this depth chart. And there's a running back on the Bears who has a New Jersey number, and it's a pretty special number in Chicago. We're going to see whether or not that was a good choice. Come on back. Let's have some Bears talk.
We're going to be an effort-based team.
Darnell being Darnell.
Love playing football.
Ready to open this thing up. Let them know that we're coming.
You hear that intro, Coach Matt Eberflus talking about the Chicago Bears being an effort-based team, and that's one of the best ways to climb the depth chart in Chicago is by proving to Coach and his staff that you're a high-energy effort player. And the Bears announced their first depth chart on Tuesday, and there's not too many surprises on offense. Let's run through the starters. You got DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool at wide receiver, left tackle Braxton Jones, right tackle Darnell Wright, Cody Whitehair, we'll circle that name and come back to him in a minute, is listed as the starting left guard. Lucas Patrick gets the start at center, and Nate Davis, one of the Bears' big free agent signings, is the starting right guard. Cole Kmet is the tight end. Of course, Justin Fields is the quarterback. Khalil Herbert, the starting running back on the depth chart, and Kari Blasingame listed as the starting fullback. I think when you look at the starters, no surprises, no real big surprises. We have to focus on the offensive line, though. I mean, I don't know about you guys out there, but for me, I would have much rather have seen Cody Whitehair stay at center while the Bears are working through this Tevin Jenkins injury. If you're not aware, Tevin Jenkins, the usual starting left guard, is on injured reserve. He's out until at least week 5, which has caused the Bears to shuffle the offensive line a little bit here in week 1 against the Green Bay Packers and probably over the next couple of weeks until Tevin Jenkins comes back. Cody Whitehair is going to left guard. Lucas Patrick will be the starting center. And to me, I feel like that maybe is a little bit of a misfire by Matt Eberflus and the coaching staff. You're taking one injury to Tevin Jenkins at one spot, left guard, and you're modifying 2 starting positions on the offensive line. Cody Whitehair has been the center essentially all offseason, and now you're moving him to left guard and forcing Lucas Patrick, who, yes, over the last couple of weeks has been getting reps and snapping to Justin Fields, but now you're pushing him into the starting lineup, and it's 2 of the 5 starting jobs that have changed a little bit here, all because of one injury. I just feel like the Bears could have done a little better if they kept Cody Whitehair at center, and perhaps at left guard, you let Lucas Patrick play there. He has experience starting at guard. Or what about Ja'Tyre Carter, JT Carter? Put him in at left guard. Let him get some reps. He had an impressive preseason and training camp. Or what about Dan Feeney? You just traded a 6th-round pick for him. He has experience starting at both center and guard. Why not plug him into the lineup? He's a grizzled veteran. He could do fine even after joining the team just a week or so ago. Having Dan Feeney at left guard, keeping Cody Whitehair in at center, it just feels like you could have changed one spot instead of 2 in advance of the Green Bay Packers game. And I think that does expose some depth issues for the Chicago Bears. You have a situation where the fact that the Bears have to take Cody Whitehair and shift him out of center and move him to left guard suggests, are they not too happy with the interior offensive line depth that's currently on the roster? Do they not trust JT Carter at this point? Maybe not. He's a small school guy, only in his 2nd year. Is Dan Feeney perhaps just not assimilated to the offense yet? It hasn't acclimated to being on a new team so soon after a trade. Perhaps that could be the reason why Whitehair has to fill in at left guard. But it certainly does call to concern. It raises some concerns, I should say, about the depth along the offensive line. Fortunately, Darnell Wright, recovered from his ankle injury and will be ready to go in his NFL debut. But even behind the tackles, I mean, you have Larry Borum as essentially the swing tackle, backing up both Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. And on this first official / unofficial depth chart dated September 10th, I'm sorry, dated for the game date that's dated September 10th, that's week 1 against the Packers. It was announced on Tuesday. There's no other tackles. I mean, it's only Larry Borum. He's the only guy with the second team. There's no third team offensive tackle. Perhaps you could say JT Carter. Is he capable of playing on the outside? I don't think so. You don't think so. God forbid something happens to one of these tackles. The Bears are going to be probably forced to go to the practice squad, activate a player, go to waivers, sign somebody. You're playing on thin ice in the offensive line department if you're only carrying one capable backup tackle. I mean, Darnell Wright already was hobbled by an ankle injury, and maybe we got spoiled with Braxton Jones last year after his ascent to the starting lineup, and his ability to play all 17 games as a rookie. Sometimes you lose sight of the war of attrition that is the NFL season, that these big guys to last 17 games and not miss a start or not miss a snap, that's a rarity. And at this point, we already see Darnell Wright didn't come out of training camp unscathed. So you're one snap away from Larry Borum being a starter, which, okay, I mean, you could do worse with a swing tackle, but Larry Borum could go down too, or Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright could go down. And there's just nobody on the depth chart who would be able to step in and fill his shoes. But I think it's pretty obvious that the biggest drop off from starter to backup is at quarterback, which I guess can be expected. There's not many teams in the league who have a backup quarterback who you could feel comfortable coming in and being apples to apples with the starter. There's going to be at least a certain level of decline in the offense when a backup is forced into action. But I mean, this feels kind of scary when you say Justin Fields is the starter and Nathan Peterman is the first guy off the bench. He's listed as the backup. He held off Tyson Bagent to be the second string quarterback, which I think that's more or less maybe a tip of the cap to the veteran at this point. I'm not so sure that by the time we get to Sunday's game against the Packers, that Tyson Bagent won't be the game day QB2. I think right now you have to have Peterman above him, right? It's kind of like the veteran benefit here. A little, like I said, a little tip of the cap to Peterman and his experience. And Justin Fields talked about some of the intangibles that Nathan Peterman brings to the quarterback room, the things that he can spot, and he notices Nate's little notes. I think Justin Fields called it, what he brings to the quarterback meetings. And, he's like the right-hand man, the assistant to the regional manager, for lack of a better term, in the quarterback room. That's Nathan Peterman. He'll be Justin Fields' Dwight Schrute in 2023. But I think when you're talking about just pure talent and a player in terms of Nathan Peterman or Tyson Bagent, who you'd feel better about going into a game and giving your offense a chance to move down the field and score points, Tyson Bagent, what he showed in the preseason, certainly is more exciting than anything Nathan Peterman has shown at this point through his career. But Tyson Bagent is a Shepherd University Division II small school kid who's never played a live snap in the NFL. Preseason stories are great. Training camp success is awesome. But to think that Tyson Bagent is ready to step in for Justin Fields in a meaningful, actual regular season game, probably wishful thinking at this point. However, I don't think the Bears would shy away from giving Bagent an opportunity to step in if Fields does have to miss a period of a game or quarter or half, something. I think Bagent would be the preferred option after a few weeks. Get into the season a little bit, get through the first month of Bagent's NFL career and see how he is developing in practice. Perhaps the Bears are fortunate enough to build up a huge lead and there's a fourth quarter where a kid like Bagent can get in and get some actual game experience against an NFL defense that's playing for real and hiding coverages and disguising defensive calls and trying to confuse him and sack him and intercept his passes at a level that he did not see in the preseason. So perhaps Tyson Bagent will be able to get some game experience like that if the Bears can build up a lead early in the season where they ice a game away, give Bagent some meaningful reps, and that might be his fastest way of getting into the starting line, the second string job over Peterman. Nathan Peterman's is not a legitimate guy. Nathan Peterman is a jag, as they call it in the scouting world. He's just a guy, and he will be a player who eventually drops to QB3. And, honestly, he could even be a guy that if the Bears do have an issue at swing tackle, if one of these injuries pop up in the next couple of weeks where they have to add a big-bodied offensive lineman, I'm looking at this depth chart, offense and defense. You got to get rid of a guy if one of these 53. It's Nathan Peterman. I'm sorry. I mean, with all due respect to him and the respect that Justin Fields might have for him as his Dwight Schrute in the quarterback room, I'm sorry. Nathan Peterman's the first guy to go. Bears fans, make sure you are subscribed to this podcast. We are on all of your favorite podcast providers. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, rate and review the podcast. It does help us grow this show organically. We do have a YouTube channel as well. We'll be doing a live YouTube version of this podcast, hopefully once a week. We're going to try to bring a live show to all of you where we can interact with you and your questions. So make sure you head over to YouTube at the Bears Talk on YouTube and subscribe there as well. The depth chart isn't limited to just offense. The defense is also part of this team, of course. And again, you look at this depth chart, it's pretty chalk, and that's a good thing. There were no real surprises on the defensive side of the ball. The narrative that has been painted or has been told to us, the fans and content creators throughout training camp, held true with this first depth chart. Let's go through it. The starters on the defensive line. You had DeMarcus Walker and Yannick Ngakoue at defensive end, Justin Jones and Andrew Billings at defensive tackle. Some Bears fans may have hoped that Javon Dexter or Zach Pickens could have won a starting job in training camp, but, they're such raw players at this point. I think we saw Javon Dexter and some of his weaknesses in the preseason. He still looks like he needs to be molded into an NFL defensive lineman. There are flash plays, of course. There are moments where Javon Dexter looks like he could become a force in the interior that has the rare combination of incredible size plus athleticism. He just has to get a little more aggressive out of his stance. We talk about his reaction time at the snap. I do think that continues to linger as an issue that hopefully he can be coached up and coached out of his somewhat slow release. Because listen, if you give an NFL offensive lineman half of a second of an advantage, you're going to lose every rep. It doesn't matter how good you are. So Javon Dexter still has work to do. I do think Zach Pickens, the third-round pick from South Carolina, who I was really excited when the Bears drafted him, I think he has a clearer path to the starting lineup sooner in his career than Javon Dexter does. Andrew Billings, with all due respect to the veteran defensive lineman, he's a good player. He's a stout defender, but I don't think he'll give the Bears much penetration. He doesn't have the kind of game-wrecking ability that Zach Pickens does have. I mean, Zach Pickens was a highly recruited player coming out of high school, and he was really, really good at South Carolina. And now he slides to the third round, and in the preseason, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but I don't think there was much comparison. I thought Zach Pickens was a much more impressive player when you compare him and Javon Dexter. Dexter was the higher draft pick, but I think Pickens was the better player on the field. And Justin Jones is ahead of Javon Dexter right now, and Justin Jones, I think, is a better player than Andrew Billings. So when you kind of combine those two factors, I think Zach Pickens will have a better shot or a clearer path to a starting lineup sooner in his career. Backing up DeMarcus Walker is Dominique Robinson, and the second string defensive end behind Yannick Ngakoue is Rasheem Green. Rasheem Green is a guy that I thought was not going to make the team. He was really bad, in my opinion, in the preseason. I thought he was washed out of plays, not aggressive as a pass rusher, pretty much a non-factor in the reps that I evaluated him. However, the Bears think highly enough of him as a well-rounded edge defender that he's the top backup behind Yannick Ngakoue. And this kind of really exposes why signing Ngakoue was so important. I mean, imagine this starting four without Ngakoue, this defensive line without Ngakoue as a starting defensive end. It would be like scary bad. Like Dominic Robinson or Rasheem Green as a starter, it's nice to maybe have them as rotational depth backups. But if they were actually in the starting lineup, this defensive line would have a lot of problems facing it as we get into week one against the Green Bay Packers. But fortunately, Ngakoue is a Bear and he has double-digit sack potential. So he flips the script, right? I mean, he takes this defensive line from a group that would have been viewed arguably as the weakness on the defense. And now he at least makes it I don't want to call it a strength because I don't know if we could say that yet, but he certainly brings it up to respectability. And let's not sleep on DeMarcus Walker either. This is a dude who is a violent player, and he's a tone setter. He might not be a player that can get more than 6 or 7 sacks in a season, but that's not really why he's here. He's an inside-outside defensive end who is going to be a violent tone setter for the Chicago Bears. I think he's going to make a lot of happy fans. He's going to have a lot of Bears fans looking to buy his jersey probably by midseason because he's a throwback old school dude. Then you go to the linebackers here, and this is really where the strength of the defense starts showing itself. It's the second and third levels where 2/3 of the linebacking crew are big ticket free agent signings. TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, the big ticket free agent prizes. Tremaine Edmonds being the biggest of them all at 2 of the linebacker spots. And Jack Sanborn, last year's undrafted free agent, who was one of the best stories of the season. I think when you talk about a player who has the high level instincts and hustle that Matt Eberflus loves to coach and talk about, Jack Sanborn embodies all of that. So when you have TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, and Jack Sanborn at the starting linebackers, that's pretty good. Like, you're talking about a defense that last year was one of the worst against the run. And a lot of times linebackers will fall under the spotlight when evaluating poor run defense. So, of course, the Bears made a big change, and getting Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, that completely changes that completely changes the narrative. It completely changes the character of the team. It completely changes what the reputation of this defense is going into a game week after week. You know, the opponents aren't going to watch Bears game film and say that this is a team like a defense that's Swiss cheese, and that if you get past the defensive line, the linebackers are no threat whatsoever. It's a completely different narrative that now will be told when you're watching film. These opposing offenses, opposing running backs, they have to fear Tremaine Edmonds. They have to fear TJ Edwards. And Jack Sanborn did enough last year to gain respect. So these guys are bringing a whole new level of intensity to the second level. And that's important because the guys behind them, the starting defensive backs, this is the real strength of the defense with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson as the top 3 cornerbacks and Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker at safety. There is a chance. There is a world that exists that in which the Chicago Bears could end up being one of the best young secondaries in the NFL. And in today's modern football, having a top tier secondary that can go punch for punch with the high flying passing offenses that are commonplace now across the league, that's critical. You know, having a guy like Yannick Ngakoue who can get to the quarterback maybe that half of a second earlier than a defense that doesn't have Yannick Ngakoue, and the guys covering the receivers have the ability to make plays on the ball. And if a quarterback is forced into an errant throw, a Jalen Johnson or a Kyler Gordon or a Tyreek Stevenson, they're going to make a play on those errant passes. And we could see a lot more turnovers. I would not be surprised if Jalen Johnson, it won't be hard for him to set a career high in interceptions because I believe he only has 1 in his career anyway. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jalen Johnson finally break through with several interceptions this year. It'd be great for him, personally for him and his bank account, because he's looking for a new contract. So I think all signs point toward Jalen Johnson having one of those years. Behind these guys, you know, Noah Sewell at linebacker, he's a player to circle as a name that could rise and threaten Jack Sanborn, regardless of all the superlatives I gave or said about Sanborn. Noah Sewell, just a couple of years ago, was a highly regarded draft prospect out of Oregon. For one reason or another, the shine wore off for him, and he became a dude that just, you know, was considered a prospect who hit his ceiling a little too early on the college level, wasn't viewed as maybe athletic enough to be a sideline to sideline guy, but he proved in training camp and in his limited action in the preseason that he can. This is a dude that can play. And if Jack Sanborn gives him an opportunity to see meaningful reps on game day, we're going to have an interesting competition eventually show itself at that third linebacker spot. Terrell Smith, who was competing with Tyreek Stevenson for the starting cornerback job early in training camp, he made the team. He's listed as a second teamer. And I really like Elijah Hicks at safety. He's going to be a really good special teams guy. And I think he's obviously not at the level of an Eddie Jackson or Jaquan Brisker, but the fact that he is a second teamer, he has really earned that spot. And I think if he gets a chance to take the field in a meaningful regular season game, he's going to show that he belongs. Maybe not as an every week starter, but he could be the kind of guy that becomes the Bears' new version of DeAndre Houston Carson, a player who makes a living on special teams, always has a spot on the roster. And when his number is called to action on defense, he doesn't kill the team. He's good enough to start when called upon. And those guys are extremely valuable. Like I said earlier, depth is key in the NFL. A starting 11 on offense and a starting 11 on defense is not going to be the same starting 11 every single game. You're not going to start the same 11 players on both sides of the ball for 17 weeks. You need players like Elijah Hicks who can come in for Eddie Jackson, who might pull a hamstring and miss 2 games. You need players like a Dan Feeney, like a Deonta Foreman, who can come in if a Khalil Herbert or a Lucas Patrick or somebody goes down. You need one of those veterans who have been there and done that, who can come in and make a play. And if we circle back to running back, let's talk about that for a minute. Khalil Herbert is the RB1, no surprise there. Deonta Foreman on the depth chart is listed as RB2, and Roschon Johnson is pretty much where we thought he'd be, right? RB3. He was a 4th-round pick who looked a lot better than Deonta Foreman in the preseason, but on this depth chart, he didn't leapfrog him. He's not the second-string running back. He's not with the, won't be the first guy off the bench, at least on paper. That's what it suggests. Do I really believe that if Khalil Herbert goes down, that Deonta Foreman would be the first guy that the Bears call upon to fill that RB1 role? I don't. I think Roschon Johnson will be that guy. I mean, Roschon Johnson, in my opinion, is going to be the third down running back. I think he'll be the primary passing game running back, which is kind of odd, right? For a guy that's the 225-pound power back to be the player that the Bears trust the most as a receiver and pass protector. But he'll have his opportunities on third down in passing situations. And he's the kind of dude that once you give him a chance, he's not going to let it go. And one of the things Roschon Johnson did on Tuesday is he changed his number from number 30 to number 23. Now, I have a couple thoughts on this before we call it a day here on the Bears Talk podcast. Changing your number to number 23 in Chicago is bold, right? There's only one true number 23 in Chicago sports. That's Air Jordan, Michael Jordan. It's a number that a lot of Chicago sports fans think should be retired across all teams in Chicago professional sports. There's an argument to be had that's viable there. I mean, when you have the greatest of all time in a particular sport, a national treasure, an icon, I would argue, and I think it's not even an argument, I think it's fact at this point, the world's most famous athlete ever, maybe second only behind Muhammad Ali, is Michael Jordan. Yeah, you have a good argument to say nobody in Chicago sports should ever wear 23. And then there's another layer to this, that the last guy who brought fame to number 23 for the Chicago Bears is a player who should be in the Hall of Fame, and that's Devin Hester. He's one of my all-time favorites. Devin Hester provided me with the greatest Chicago Bears memory of my lifetime when he returned the opening kickoff against the Indianapolis Colts in the Super Bowl for a touchdown. Unfortunately, it was a Super Bowl that the Bears ended up losing, but I literally almost died on that play. And I don't, that's not tongue in cheek. Like when Devin Hester returned that opening kick for a touchdown, I felt chest pains. I was screaming so loud and going so crazy that I had to sit down and catch my breath. And I was a young guy, like in shape, young guy, not like some, old, war-torn Bears fan who's about 75 pounds overweight. That wasn't me at that time. Thankfully, it's still not me, but it wasn't me then either. And I was getting chest pains. Like Devin Hester almost killed me. Devin Hester almost killed me. That's how impressive of a player he was. He not only killed opposing special teams units, he almost killed me, a Bears fan. So when I see anybody else want to or actually wear number 23 since Devin Hester has left town, it's a little hard to accept. But I will say this. Having the balls to want number 23. Like there's something more behind this, right? Roschon Johnson, we all have heard about Roschon Johnson and his leadership and Roschon Johnson's character and Roschon Johnson rising to a level that the Bears actually said he was a potential pillar of the organization after drafting him in the 4th round. You tell me, Bears fans, have you ever heard of any 4th round pick ever for any team in any NFL draft who is described as a potential pillar of the organization? That's what the Bears thought of Roschon Johnson. And then the rookie minicamp stories of him staying behind and cleaning up the garbage left behind by his teammates, the water bottles and whatnot. And Roschon Johnson essentially forcing everyone around him to want to make themselves better, wanting to elevate who they are, their practice habits, how they carry themselves. Roschon Johnson is a walking, breathing, like magnet of leadership. So, of course, he's going to embrace what comes along with wearing number 23. He's doing this for a reason. He didn't wear 23 in college. 23 wasn't a number that maybe he wore in high school. I'll have to do a little bit of a deep dive and see if 23 was his number in high school. But he didn't wear this number. It wasn't a special number at the University of Texas for him. 23 is a Chicago number, and Roschon Johnson knows it. And that's why Roschon Johnson picked it. Now, at the time that I'm recording this, I have not seen or heard or read any Roschon Johnson quotes about switching to number 23. So if there is another explanation, hit me up on X at Bryan Perez NFL. Let me know what Roschon may have said while I'm recording this. Perhaps there is a logical reason. Maybe it's his mom's favorite number or something special to him when he was growing up. But I have a feeling Roschon Johnson is such a high character guy that he wants to embrace the challenge of what it means to wear number 23 in Chicago. He wants that. And let me tell you something. I will take that kind of dude every day of the week. Give me the guy who embraces pressure. Pressure to wear number 23 in Chicago is as high as any that you will see in any sport. And Roschon Johnson said, give it to me. I want to wear it. I want to own it. I want to make my own legacy with this number or bring honor to the number and what it represents in Chicago. That's special, Bears fans. That's special. That means that Roschon Johnson is made. He's different. He's not like Deonta Foreman. And with all due respect to Khalil Herbert, he's not like Khalil Herbert. He's a different guy. So those dudes better make sure they don't let him get in the game. Because if Roschon Johnson gets in the game, I don't think the Bears are going to be able to take him out. Having the balls to wear number 23 means something. And I was a big fan of Roschon Johnson before making that switch. I thought number 30 looked good on him. You know, old school Terrell Davis number kind of reminds me of that slashing running style. I thought 30 would have been fine. Old school Bears fans, you remember Mike Brown wearing number 30? That's a cool number. But to switch to 23, yeah, this dude gets it. And I think when he gets the rock this year, we're all going to see why the Bears thought he would be a pillar of the organization. Again, Bears fans, make sure you're going to bearstalk.com every day for your Chicago Bears news, notes, and analysis. Follow us on all your social media platforms. We're also on Facebook at The Bears Talk, at The Bears Talk on X, at Bryan Perez on X. Come on back tomorrow. We'll have another episode of the Bears Talk podcast. And until then, bear down.